All right, in this video, we want to discuss an important component of our immune response during infection, which is fever. So let's first start by defining fever. So fever is a component of our immunological response, and specifically it's part of our second line of defense. Fever is a normal response to infection. So sometimes we think of having a fever as bad, having a fever as something we try to treat from time to time. But again, this is a benefit. So our immune response, our immune system is triggering a fever on purpose because it can be very beneficial to fighting an infection. Now, the definition of a fever is really straightforward, right? A fever is any time our body temperature is over 37 degrees Celsius or 98 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So any elevated body temperature is a fever. And there are a lot of reasons fever can happen, but we're going to focus on the fevers that are a result of microbial infection. So again, really straightforward. Fever is beneficial. Our body does it on purpose, and it's anytime the body temperature is raised over 37 degrees Celsius. So what causes the body temperature to rise? So to understand fever, we really need to understand these things called pyrogens. So what is a pyrogen? A pyrogen is just a chemical that triggers fever. So there's a whole bunch of different pyrogens. Lots of different chemicals can act as pyrogens. But again, a pyrogen is any chemical that is capable of triggering a fever in the human body. How do they do that? Well, pyrogens they stimulate the hypothalamus. Right? The hypothalamus is responsible for regulating body temperature. So that stimulation of the hypothalamus results in an elevated body temperature. So again, a pyrogen is any chemical that can stimulate the hypothalamus, leading to an increased body temperature. There are a couple forms of pyrogens. We will talk about pyrogens based on where they originate from. And basically we're asking, do they originate from your own body? Like do your cells make these chemicals on purpose? Or do they originate from something outside of your body, like the microbe that is causing an infection? So the terminology we'll use for this is exogenous if the pyrogen is produced by a microbe and that is stimulating the fever. So again, exogenous pyrogens come from outside your body. They are produced by the microorganisms that are infecting you. One really common example of a exogenous pyrogen is LPS, or lipopolysaccharide. So we know that LPS is a component of the gram-negative outer membrane. And we know that LPS is an endotoxin. Microbes make LPS as part of their structure. But again, when gram-negative microbes that contain LPS die, and they shed that LPS, when it circulates through our bodies, can act as an exogenous pyrogen. So this is where that terminology, exogenous and endogenous, can get really confusing for students. In this case, when we're referring to the pyrogen that is acting on your body, this is an exogenous pyrogen because it came from outside your cells. Your cells did not make it. But LPS is also an endogenous toxin because it's physically part of microbial cells. So I just encourage you to be very careful and thoughtful as you are using the terms exogenous and endogenous. What kind of molecule are you talking about? And when we're talking about it, which cells are we referring to, humans or bacterial? Anyway, again, pyrogens can come in two different forms. Exogenous, made by microbes, not by the human cells. And LPS is a great example. And then there can be endogenous pyrogens. Endogenous pyrogens are made by your own cells, and they go to the hypothalamus and trigger fever. One common example are these chemicals called interleukins. So interleukins are a class of chemicals that are made by white blood cells, and the white blood cells make these chemicals when they encounter infectious microbes. So it's sort of a warning signal. So the white blood cell finds a infectious microorganism in your body, and the white blood cell produces interleukins, which gets secreted, and then those interleukins can signal around your body. In part, they can cause you to develop a fever because of their pyrogen activity. All right, so we know that fever is an elevated body temperature. We know that pyrogens are chemicals that trigger fever by stimulating the hypothalamus. So the last thing we want to think about is why our body stimulates fever. So again, fever is beneficial. This is a normal component of our immune response. And fever is beneficial. It helps us get better faster. But why? So the first benefit of fever is that this higher temperature inhibits microbial growth. So we have looked at this graph previously in our class. We've thought about the temperatures at which microbes grow best. And for most microbes that cause disease, this optimum, this maximum growth rate, is right around 37 degrees Celsius. And you can see that if you increase the temperature just a couple degrees, you can dramatically decrease the growth rate of a microorganism. So this is the number one benefit of fever. By increasing our body temperature just above the optimum growth temperature of a microorganism, we can drastically reduce the growth rate of that microorganism. And if we slow down microbial growth, we can more quickly battle that infection. Our immune cells can more rapidly remove those microbes because there aren't as many of them being produced. So when I think about fever, this is the number one benefit I think of, that the increased temperature reduces microbial growth because as temperature increases, the proteins in microbes begin to denature and chemical reactions don't work as well and they die really quickly. But that's not the only benefit, so there are a few others. The next one is that fever interacts with another process in our immune response, which is inflammation. And fever benefits inflammation. So inflammation works a little bit better when the temperature is elevated. And we'll discuss inflammation in another video and think about why that might be the case. So we've got decreased microbial growth. We've got better functioning inflammation. Then we can think about the next benefit, which is an increase in phagocyte activity. So phagocyte cells are critically important immune cells. Again, their job is to roam around your body looking for things that do not belong. And when a phagocyte identifies something that doesn't belong, they consume it, they ingest it, and they destroy it. So again, this is a really critical component of one's immune response. And it turns out that phagocytes work better at higher temperatures. So by inducing a fever, we slow down the growth, we make inflammation work better, and we make our phagocytes work better. All these things are going to start contributing to really knocking down that infection. There's one more benefit we'll talk about, and that is that when our body temperature goes up, some micronutrients that are available in our body, things like iron, copper, and zinc, they actually become less available to the microorganisms. So if you've taken a chemistry class ever, you might have done an experiment like this where you had something dissolved in a liquid. And as you heat up that liquid for some substances, their solubility actually decreases. That means the liquid can hold less of that stuff and it will precipitate out as a solid. That same kind of thing is happening in our body. So as our temperature increases, these really important micronutrients precipitate out. They're no longer available in forms that microbes can use. And this kind of starves microbes of important nutrients. If there's not enough iron around for them, they can't grow as fast. And that again, any decrease in microbial growth is a huge benefit to us as we try to battle that infection. So 4 main benefits to fever. Slow the growth because of the increased temperature, boost the effects of inflammation, boost the activity of phagocytes, and then further decrease microbial growth because we starve them of some micronutrients that go away at higher temperatures. And so that's where we'll end. Those are all the details about fever that we should be aware of. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll talk to you all again very soon.